Bitcoin continues to correct, seeing its largest drop in 10 days just yesterday. We're seeing bearish narrative after bearish narrative and indicator, but what does not confirm those narratives is volume. This is very low conviction selling and buying, and very little is going on technically. I'm going to take a look at the Bitcoin and Ethereum charts and all of the news that's driving the markets, most of it actually being bullish. Let's go. What is up, everybody? I'm Scott Melker, also known as the Wolf of All Streets. Before we get started, please go ahead and like the channel, hit that subscribe button down below. Now, as I mentioned, Bitcoin had one of its worst days in weeks yesterday, dropping almost 10%, and everybody is on the hunt for narrative. Analysts are showing incredibly bearish charts. I've seen price targets now down all the way to $8,000 on the break of the bear pennant that we're seeing right now. But in the same vein, we're also seeing this crazy bullish news as Central and South America seem to be falling like dominoes in line for Bitcoin adoption. Michael Saylor is looking to raise another $400 million, like the Giga Chad that he is, to go ahead and buy more Bitcoin. And we've also seen the largest outflow from exchange of the entire year yesterday. So what is going on? There's bullishness, there's bearishness, and the chart is doing absolutely nothing, but we will take a look at that first. Taking a look at the Bitcoin daily chart, you can see that I've pulled Fibonacci levels from the lows of March 2020. Those are the black levels, and the lows of 9,800 from last September. Those are the red levels. Now, we were holding the 50% retracement level. That is not a Fibonacci level, no matter what people tell you. 50% is just a common area that traders look for a bounce. It's called the Dow level, has been used in stock market for ages. So what we are seeing here is that we are losing the 50%. You can see that all these candles were supported by it. Wicks below, but candle closes above. But now we've actually closed a candle yesterday below and are trading below that. But we are still trading above the golden pocket of the red Fibonacci levels. That's the 61.8% to 65%. We bounce from that area, and that is an area that Bitcoin absolutely loves to bounce. Also loves to go down after it hits it on a down move and retraces back up to the golden pocket. That's a very common area to look for a trend reversal or for the trend to continue after a bounce. Nothing here looks particularly great, I'm going to be honest, but as I mentioned, there's still very low conviction here. There's almost no volume on any of these moves. It seems like people are just playing with the market right now. Very few people are looking to buy in this area. They're probably looking to buy lower, and very few people look to be willing to sell down to those levels either. So this is just an absolute low volume sideways chop fest that I cannot imagine even attempting to trade with someone else's money who I hate. Now, we did have this bear pennant or symmetrical triangle that was formed, but as I said, this was the Elon Musk tweet that broke it down last Thursday after it seemed to be breaking up. But as we approach the apex, you realize that this pattern is effectively meaningless. A powerful pattern breaks out between 60-70% before completion. You would have expected this to be the area that the real breakout. Once this faked above, came down, tested support, we're way too close to the apex for this pattern to matter. So I see this more as just a big sideways chop range and not really as a symmetrical triangle or bear pennant. Either way, though, it did break support. You could draw this support regardless of the pattern. You would expect that to come down and retest the 30,000 lows where that pattern started. If you were drawing this as a bear flag, believe it or not, and I don't believe it, obviously, this is kind of what your target would be. If you consider the dump here, and you consider this to be your flag, and on a log chart we extrapolate that to the breakdown, that would take you down to $5,860, which is not a target that I feel is realistic, and that's why I do not view this as a bear pennant. Either way, we have low conviction selling, very minimal volume on the breakdown, meaning that it's not as powerful as you might think. Also on the daily chart, you know I'm always looking for a bull div or a bear div, and we once again have potential bullish divergence on the daily chart. We had a bull div and oversold, hidden bear div that canceled it, another bull div, hidden bear div that canceled it, and now another potential bullish divergence. So it does seem that buying interest is still rising as price is dropping, but no guarantees that this will actually confirm, although we will very likely get a much bigger bull div from here back in May 19th all the way to here, regardless of where this lands. It would be interesting to see this sell off to like 30,000, 29,000, come oversold again, form a much bigger bullish divergence from these lows, and then continue up. Now, drilling into the 4-hour chart, if you're bullish, this is sort of the idea. And this actually looks like a Wyckoff accumulation schematic. This would be your spring down here, much like people were showing the distribution schematic at the top. Clearly, we are ranging. It was hugging this 36,000 area right around the EQ of that range. That's the equilibrium, that 50% retracement, this dashed line before breaking down. You would expect that if you lose the EQ, that middle range, that you come down to the bottom. So what I would be looking for personally, if you're dying to trade this, is a sweep of this low, especially if we got a wick down into 28,000, 29,000 and closed back above. That would be an epic sign that this could be going back up, and a spring if you're a Wyckoff trader. But as I said, there's just no volume. No volume. Nothing is happening. Nobody cares. Even this candle, a marginal tiny spike, not even as big as these little candles over here. Nothing is happening. This is absolutely sideways chop. If it does lose the range and close below, that's when you start talking about significantly lower targets. But for now, anything between these levels of around 30,000 and 43,000 is effectively just a huge range of sideways chop, chop, chop. Get out your slap chop. Cut those vegetables. There's nothing happening here. Let's look at Ethereum, Bitcoin really quickly. Looking at the Ethereum weekly chart, you can see we've only had one red week since March. Really crazy. And that's this huge week right here, 3 weeks ago, and it went down, and it's continued to climb almost back to the highs against Bitcoin, which was 0.082695 or so. It's currently trading at 0.075. Ethereum continues to look powerful against Bitcoin, and we have tons of volume still increasing and always increasing on this pair. If we drill down into the daily here, you can see that we did have this breakout. That was a strong move on slightly increased volume above, a retest as support, and then a break above. So anything right now above 0.0737, which is this black line, looks really good. In fact, if you're still bullish, maybe you bid this area and try to catch it up to there. Very small scalp, but still a potential trade. Now, looking at the Ethereum USD pair, I mean, obviously rejected here at 29.13. I think at this point, if you're trading this, you really want to be above that level and heading up, because anything else you might be trickling down here. And it's really hard to trade this at this point. This is all sideways chop, but interesting to note that since the lows, it is continuing to make higher lows. You have the low here, higher low, and for now a higher low as long as we close above this area. But this is also a slightly lower high. So at the end of the day, we want to make a higher high. Same with Bitcoin. And that's how we would confirm that bullish market structure is back intact. So for now, sideways chop, higher lows, need to make a higher high. But I still think that Ethereum, obviously, when looking at the ETH Bitcoin pair, looks much better than Bitcoin. Now let's dive into some of the news that's driving the market. I'm going to go through this real quick because there's so many bearish stories by analysts, right? Bitcoin suffers steepest drop in 10 days as U.S. monetary policy causes short-term jitters. Bitcoin continues its descent and whispers of U.S. Federal Reserve tapering economic stimulus and China's ongoing pressure on crypto miners. Bitcoin dropped. There's no volume. There's no narrative. This is just traders having low conviction and price just sort of floating up and down. I don't see there being any narrative, but it is interesting that now the news cycle has slowed tremendously after we had so much negative news just pounding and pounding and pounding the market on the way down. I've been saying this for 4 days. Even with the Bitcoin Miami conference, it seems eerily quiet in the mainstream media about Bitcoin and crypto right now, except for, of course, the fact that the Colonial Pipeline money was largely traced and returned. Try doing that with cash. We always joke that Bitcoin is supposed to be for criminals and for terrorists and for drug dealers, but it's a hell of a lot easier to recover than good old-fashioned US dollars because it's a public ledger. So I will say it's nice to see that narrative somewhat dispelled with a quick resolution by the FBI there. But Bitcoin, yes, suffers steepest drop in 10 days, and they're giving the narrative that it's the U.S. Federal Reserve tapering economic stimulus. We all know that's not going to happen. Give me a break. We know that they're going to continue quantitative easing and printing money endlessly until it all comes tumbling down like the house of cards that it is. And because of China's ongoing pressure on crypto miners, where's the news story there? China has already said it's putting pressure on crypto miners. There's absolutely nothing new here. It's just renewed FUD to try to justify why prices dropped. Another one, Bitcoin correction phase deepens, support around 37 to 30K. Sure, that's absolutely true. But yet again, everybody is turning so bearish, it would seem. Bitcoin registered a series of lower price highs since April, is now oversold based on the daily relative strength index. That's not a bad thing. However, in a corrective phase, oversold conditions can remain in place for a while before a price recovery materializes. That's true. Bitcoin will need to remain above 30K to avoid entering bear market territory. That I do not agree with personally. And the downward sloping 100-day moving average indicates trend weakness over the near term. This means that price rises should remain limited until oversold signals appear in the weekly chart, which could occur later this month. We are very far from oversold on the weekly chart. I definitely hope we do not get there. But you can see lots of bearishness. Some more bearishness. Bitcoin price due for break below 30K. Trader warns after 9% daily loss. Nothing to see here, just the same narrative. Crypto markets tumble after miners unload 5,000 Bitcoin in 1 week. Yes, miners unloaded some Bitcoin. It's a lot of selling, and we're below the 200-day moving average. Oh, how dare us, because moving averages are so important. Which actually reminds me, going back to the chart, everyone's kind of talking about this 50 MA potentially crossing below the 200 MA, which would be a death cross and a bearish signal. But I always like to remind people when talking about MAs that they are formed because of past price. They are inherently lagging indicators. You can see the 50 MA is going down. That's because price dropped here, not because it's going to drop further. So I would not worry about a death cross on the daily chart personally. But yes, everybody's talking about these moving averages and how they're affecting price. What I want you to see here is that there's just tons of bearish analysis. And when that happens, what usually happens? Well, things can tend to go the other way. For Ethereum, Ether price indicator turns bearish for first time since October. MACD is a technical indicator used to gauge trend changes and strength. Chart analysts consider a move below zero to signify a bearish shift in momentum and a move into positive territory as a bullish reversal signal. Okay, so one indicator says that Ethereum is likely to go down, fair, but we had a bullish cross on the same indicator, MACD, on Bitcoin just days ago. Figure it out. So now switching from the bearishness over to some bullishness. As Les Moskovsky said, 22,550 Bitcoin withdrawn from exchanges yesterday on aggregate. This is the biggest net outflow of the year. That's from Glassnode. As you can see, that is the most Bitcoin that has left an exchange in a single day. That means that it's being moved out of the active trading market and into cold storage. That is supply being removed. That is generally bullish. Then, of course, the news of the entire weekend in the last few days, South America is leapfrogging the other continents and making Bitcoin a legal tender. We obviously saw the president of El Salvador say that Bitcoin would be legal tender in their country, which is absolutely huge on so many levels because many don't realize El Salvador uses the dollar as their currency. And this is a country literally saying they're going to hedge against the US dollar and their currency by accepting Bitcoin as legal tender. We'll get into this whole story another day. I've written extensively about it, but it is absolutely massive and huge. But now we're seeing Panama and Paraguay and Brazilian politicians all adding laser eyes to their profiles, talking about announcements and things coming. It seems that the dominoes are falling very fast in South and Central America. And this is real government adoption of Bitcoin as a currency. The tax implications are absolutely incredible. Imagine if you didn't have to pay taxes because Bitcoin was legal tender in a currency and not viewed as property like it is in the United States. MicroStrategy wants to raise $400 million via debt and buy more Bitcoin with it. Why not? This is what Michael Saylor does. He makes huge bets. He's a giga chad of epic proportions. I don't think we're ever going to see another company like MicroStrategy and another leader like Michael Saylor, but he is putting his money continually where his mouth is. Absolutely insane conviction. And what's more important, like I've said before, when he announces this, you know that he's going to buy. This is $400 million that you can front run in buying Bitcoin. If you buy Bitcoin right now, you know that right after you, at some point, probably in the next week, MicroStrategy will be buying $400 million. This is another rare opportunity to front run an institution by retail. And the final story, you can call it bullish or bearish, I don't care. Doesn't matter. Trump calls Bitcoin a scam, advocates for dollar hegemony. Former US President Donald Trump is still not a fan of Bitcoin, called it a scam, while stating that the dollar should remain the currency of the world. Here's his exact quote in his normal, eloquent tone. Bitcoin, it just seems like a scam. I don't like it because it is another currency competing against the dollar. Essentially, it is a currency competing against the dollar. You just said that, bro. I want the dollar to be the currency of the world. That's what I've always said. He used the words dollar and currency so many times in like 4 sentences. That was really impressive. But it's kind of ironic because as president, he and no party has any sort of monopoly on devaluing the dollar, but he was actively devaluing the dollar just like Joe Biden is now and every president has for years. It's incredible to watch presidents and politicians talk about dollar domination and being a global reserve currency as they actively work to raise debt and devalue that very currency. But more importantly, Trump's voice does not matter. We know what he thinks of Bitcoin, and he is already out the door. That is all for today. What a whirlwind of both bearish and bullish news, ugly charts, and low volume, low conviction price action. Please check out my newsletter. It is down in the description. I put it out 5 days a week. It's $15 a month to get the paid subscription, or you can just wait for the free one, which is exactly the same and comes out every 2 weeks. Also, you can sign up for Femex down below. They'll give you some free Bitcoin. That is one amazing exchange. And until my Chartapalooza tomorrow, when I take chart requests from my newsletter subscribers, I will talk to you. Peace.